Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are Propelled by Plants.
Today we bring to you episode 289, Eating for Health and Building Communities with Anthony Masiello.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, of course, we talk with Anthony Masiello about his transformation story. And we also get into how to build connections with other people and his life as a plant-based family as well. So we wanted to really highlight his story because we thought that a lot of you would be able to connect with him or know somebody who could, because he was over 300 pounds. He thought he was doing everything right and he just couldn't lose the weight. So it's really interesting to hear about why he was able to make the changes and how he got to that point where the changes actually took place. It's really actually interesting how that happened, and we think that you're going to enjoy that. Then we got into talking to him a little bit about how to make those connections with people in your own area, because we hear from listeners all the time that they're alone. They're the only ones in their city. They're the only ones in their state. They're the only ones in the world, or that's how they feel, that are plant-based or trying to make plant-based changes. So he gives lots of great tips on how to make those connections, how to make those local connections, and if they're not there already, how you can take control of that. We really do hope that you send out this podcast on your social media, share it with other people, and make sure to join the conversation at Plant Trainers on Instagram.
So Anthony went through a huge life transformation, and the motivation behind it was very interesting and one that really hit home with me. So I know that you're going to find it interesting. It's a very cool story, and you're going to want to learn what he's doing now, because what he's gotten into is really helping other people find their reason and purpose for making change in their life and giving them the support that they need. He's been featured on so many different shows and articles. He's been on TV before, and he's been talked about in many magazines. And Anthony really just wants to help you find your ultimate path to health. So make sure to check out the show notes at planttrainers.com/289 to get all the details on today's episode, and we hope you enjoy it. Calling all chefs out there. Well, people who need to cook to be able to eat.
We're always getting emails and DMs asking us what to do and what to make. Well, just the other night, we were at a friend's house who must have had 45 cookbooks. Now, the problem with that is not the hundreds of dollars that she spent on the cookbooks, but the hundreds of dollars that's going to get wasted on buying ingredients that are going to go unused because she'll only use a little bit for this and a little bit for that.
Our e-cookbook, Easy Recipes for Busy Parents, isn't like that. Actually, it's not just for parents, it's for any person who needs to cook and eat, who doesn't want to throw away half the unused ingredients in 6 months' time once they expire or were never used. So this amazing recipe book will not cost you only $7.99. It will save you hundreds of dollars by reusing ingredients and millions of seconds you would have wasted wondering what's for dinner.
And of course, you could purchase multiple copies to give as gifts. So find it now at planttrainers.com/shop or click Easy Recipes for Busy Parents in the show notes.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
I'm grateful that our son Russell helped me make some lentil chili the other day. He was trying to open up the cans. He was washing the top of the cans. He was getting things from the fridge and measuring things out with me. And it was just amazing to spend that time with him, but also give him skills that he's going to need.
I'm grateful to be able to help my kids with their homework. This morning we sat down and we did some work, and it was a little bit frustrating for one of them, but in the end we got it done and we worked together to make it happen. So I'm grateful to just have that time to be able to do that with them.
Anthony Masiello, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Super happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, and we wanted to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and our listeners.
I do. Today, I really appreciate having a family who embraces this lifestyle with me, and the opportunity to come on your show and to share the message with the hopes of helping others.
That's a great moment. And I think that Adam and I share that every day in terms of, like, yes, our family and yes, those other things, but in terms of being able to share messages with people every day, I think it's so important. And had people not shared their messages at the beginning, we wouldn't be here sharing ours. So I think that's huge. So thank you for that moment.
I agree. Yeah, you're welcome.
We've had a few other transformational stories on our podcast, and yours is a little bit different than the others. You do share some similarities. We've had Josh Lajani on and Tim Kaufman and Josh Turner, and we'll link to their episodes in our show notes at planttrainers.com. But I'd love for you to go back and give us a bit of the history and how you got started onto this path to a plant-based lifestyle and transforming your life, not only physically, but mentally as well.
Sure. So we have to go way back to my childhood. My parents split up, and my mother and brother and I moved to North Carolina. So I spent my school years in North Carolina, living with my mom and my brother, and then my brother and I would come to New Jersey over the summers to spend with my dad. And I remember it was in between the 4th and 5th grades. I went back to North Carolina after the summer, and I had gained weight. And gained weight to the point where it became a topic among my friends. You know how if I probably would have put on that weight slowly in front of people, I almost think no one would have said or noticed anything. But because I was away for almost 3 months, I guess there was somehow a noticeable difference to them. It wasn't as noticeable to me. But they started asking questions and making comments like, how'd you gain so much weight over the summer? And you know, making teasing, lighthearted comments like kids in the 5th grade do. But somehow I kind of adopted that identity, and I kind of owned that identity. And it really set me up for, I guess, struggles with my weight all through school.
I don't want to cut you off, but I will. So you identified with that. Is that because you were getting attention that you hadn't got before and you kind of like that? Or is it just, it became part of your subconscious? Like, what made you want to identify with that?
I don't know that I even wanted to. And it wasn't that I was getting different attention. I mean, these were my same friends who I had always had. And it didn't make us any closer or more friends, but what it did was it made me feel self-conscious. So I remember always wanting to, like, you know, pull my shirt away from my chest, like, you know, thinking that my shirt was clinging and stuff like that, like, and almost trying to, you know, hide the fact that I had gained weight or that I was big. And in the back of my mind, it was always there. So when it's time, when you're in grade school like that, and it's time to, you know, have a girlfriend or something, you know, my friends started, you know, getting girlfriends. I always felt self-conscious to the point where I was like, oh, well, you know, no one probably wants to be my girlfriend because I'm like, you know, because I'm heavy. So what it really did was, when I say I owned it, it wasn't really in a very fun way. It really was in this kind of making me self-conscious and caused me to kind of create filters in how I dealt with the world because how I felt on the inside. And I think it really zapped a lot of my self-confidence at a young age is what it did.
Better understanding now, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I grew up, you know, without going into full therapy with you today. Mm-hmm. But I grew up like that. And then, you know, I was able to live a very an active and a normal life. I mean, I always had a lot of friends. Eventually I did get a girlfriend, you know, and moving forward to the point where in 2000 I got married, and my wife and I in 2002, we started a family. We had our first son, and then we were expecting our second son, who ended up being born in May of 2006. I'm sorry, my first son was born in 2004. My second was born in 2006. So at that time, I went to get a life insurance policy, and I had gotten one when my first son was born, and I was put in a high-risk category. So it kind of caused some anxiety for me to be applying for another life insurance policy, but that's what we wanted to do as a family, you know, to make sure things were okay if something ever were to happen to me. And at that point, when I applied 2 years later, I was flat declined. And I was denied a 20-year term life insurance policy. And that was really the moment that was my wake-up call. That's what made me realize that I better take a really close look at my life because I don't think I'm seeing it as objectively as I could have, because I know how the insurance company works. They literally plug in all your information into this big computer and it spits out an answer. What category do you fall in? And mine fell into the category, as I understood it, of probably not going to live for 20 years, so let's not insure this guy. So, that was really hard, especially at a time where we were just starting a family. I feel like my life was settling in, things were going well, we're starting a family, like that we're going on to the next step. And then it was like, boom, a ton of bricks fell on me.
Were you struggling with any health issues at that time, or it was just because of the extra weight that you were carrying around?
Yeah, so I wasn't necessarily struggling with any one issue, but I guess at that point, I had accumulated enough lingering issues where it was a problem in total. Because I used to donate blood all through, actually through the end of high school and college. So all through the 90s and 2000s. And sometimes I would get a letter back from the blood collection company that said we weren't able to use your blood. It had to be discarded because of and I don't know the details honestly, but because it wasn't healthy enough, right? And my doctors were always telling me to lose weight. They were always telling me that my cholesterol was a borderline, it was a little bit over 200, but they never forced me to go on medication. They always told me that my blood pressure was a little bit high, but they weren't surprised given my size. So all of these things. And then I had eczema on my fingers my whole life. I used to put these creams on and have to sleep with these cotton gloves at night, to try to clear it up. And so none of these things was really interrupted my daily life, but they were all there accumulating. And so at the point in time when I'm denied this life insurance policy, I'm 360 pounds. I have a 54-inch waist, and I had just been diagnosed now with sleep apnea on top of everything else, which included my high cholesterol, my high blood pressure that I ended up having to go on medication for. So at that point, I was medicated for high blood pressure. I had psoriasis on the back of my neck, had this eczema on my fingers. I would get migraine headaches that I was trying to get the doctor to help me with, in the combination with addressing my blood pressure. So all of those things combined raised enough of a red flag for the insurance company to say no good, but they also, no one of them was bad enough where I wasn't able to, live my daily life. I still did go to work every day. I still did take care of my, my family. I still did go snowboarding in the winter. I was able to do these things functionally, but I guess when you add it all up, it was a bigger deal than any one of the things would have been on their own.
And Adam brought up some of the other transformational stories that we talked about before. Did you have, besides the possibility of food addiction, did you have any other addictions or depression or anxiety or anything like that?
Nothing that was diagnosed, and I really don't think so. And my food addiction, I also hear some of these transformation stories, and people are at the fast food restaurant 3 times a day, and they're doing things that are more stereotypical of someone my size. And honestly, I wasn't doing those things. My wife and I have been CSA members, which means we bought a share of a farm, and we got a huge box of vegetables every week since 2000, every summer. And here we are now, it's 2005, 2006, this time frame that we're talking about. So for the past 5 years, we have been CSA members. I gave up meat and alcohol in 1994. So even at this point, I didn't drink alcohol, and I hadn't had any meat in, 15 years, 10 years, at that point in time. So I was relatively health conscious. Now I did have things like pizza with cheese on it, and I did have like Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and I probably was not as disciplined as walking past a plate of cookies, as other people. But it wasn't like I was going out in the morning and stopping at the fast food restaurant on the way to work and then having, a lousy breakfast at work. And then, like I hear some of these people are eating like fast food, 5 and 6 and 7 times a day and just living off chicken wings and pizza. My life really wasn't like that. I was eating a lot of vegetables and stuff. So I don't know if it means my metabolism is just very slow or what it was, but somehow, having enough of that having some of the dairy, the sweets, the processed foods, and the sugar, like having enough of that without really having junk food or fast food was enough to put me into this condition.
Right. And so what happened next? You got that life insurance denial, and then
Yeah.
how did you decide? Well, you made the decision, but it's not an easy decision to make. So how did you come to the point where you said enough is enough? I'm making this change, and how did you find the change that was the one that you chose?
Yeah, so I started to really take a close look at how I was actually living. I was traveling a lot for work, and I was flying on airplanes, and I really didn't fit into an airplane seat. And I would overflow onto the people to my right and my left if I ended up being in a center seat. And the seatbelt wouldn't even fit around me. So I started just kind of replaying all of these things in my mind and realizing, like, I can't fit in armchairs. I couldn't take my kids on the amusement park ride, when the carnival came to town. It was only our first time. We had an 18-month-old and my wife was pregnant, but we went to the carnival and that came to town, and my son wanted to go on this train ride and I couldn't take him on it. Right. And it's a longer story there, but that really made me question what kind of parent I was going to be, because I was in this mindset of really taking a close look at my life. I'm like, wow, I'm going to be standing on the outside watching my family do a lot of things if I don't make a change. So there were all of these, again, they're just little things, but they accumulated to really put me into a state of mind where I had to change. Like, there was no option. I had tried and tried and tried. I've had some success over years, but nothing that lasted. But I was super motivated to find something right now that would. The truth is I had no idea what to do. So I set a New Year's resolution. It was the end of 2005. And I said, in 2006, I'm not going to drink any soda. I'm not going to eat any sweets. And I'm going to figure out how to lose 50 pounds this year. That was my goal. And unfortunately for me, that was also my plan. I didn't know what else to do. So I went into the first couple of months of 2006. I didn't have any soda and I didn't have any sweets, and I kept myself hungry, which was the only way I thought I was going to be able to lose weight. And I didn't lose a single pound. So come around, the end of February, the beginning of March, I was really feeling more helpless than ever. Like, I was like, there is really nothing that is going to work for me. But I just kept searching, and I found Dr. Furman's book, Eat to Live, on Amazon. And when I read the description, it seemed to make sense. It says, eat fruit and vegetables and nothing else, and you'll get healthy and you'll lose a lot of weight. And the get healthy part was really what hit me, because right now, this is the first time I wasn't just trying to lose weight. I was really trying to fix all of these medical issues that I had going on, so that I would have the confidence that I would be around for my family for a long time.
Because the insurance company basically gave you a prognosis that your doctor wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. My overweight doctor was telling me to lose weight. I'm like, okay. And then I walk out the door. I'm like, well, you can't help me because you can't help yourself. And I'm not singling out one doctor. That was a trend in my whole life. I had overweight doctors telling me to lose weight.
I was reading this morning that the number one killer of cardiologists is heart attack.
Yeah. It's so sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so clearly the things that they know how to do aren't helping, right? So, but what I liked when I read the reviews on Dr. Furman's book on Amazon was that, everyone was saying it worked. And everyone was saying that they got healthy. And how he described it by the time I was reading the book is that you get healthy and you will lose the weight. But you're not losing the weight because you're trying to lose weight. You're losing the weight because you're trying to get healthy. So the act of getting healthy fixes your blood pressure. It fixes your cholesterol. It fixes your weight. It fixes, all of these health concerns. And those are more like side effects of getting healthy like that. So I started to look at my weight not as the end goal, but kind of just as a measure on how healthy I was becoming on the inside. So I felt like if I was losing weight, then something inside me that I was healing my body. And it was a very different way than I had ever looked at it before. But I bought that book and I just did what it said. I cleared everything else out of my mind. I didn't read it with a critical eye. I just said, okay, this is what he says to do, and this is what I'm going to do. And I lost about 30 pounds in the first 2 months.
Wow.
And and at that point I was psyched. Like, I was like, okay, this is working. And I continued, and I lost the weight over 20 months. I lost about 8 pounds a month for 20 months, and then my weight loss stopped. And now it's been level for 12 years since then.
And you're still following that book?
Yeah, what I did, so a lot of things worked in my favor there. The fact that I had 160 pounds to lose means I had to be, I told myself that I had to be strict for a very long time, right? And I just ate that way for nearly 2 years, for probably 2 years. I didn't change, right when I stopped losing weight, I didn't change the way I ate. I just continued to eat the same way, but I just didn't lose any more weight. My weight just stayed the same. But by that point, I had all new habits because I did this for 2 years. It would have taken effort then to start incorporating other things into my diet, like more processed food or things like that. Like, I just continued just eating the way that I basically learned how to eat. So, it's not that I consciously decided to then stay with the plan. It's just that I actually had switched my eating habits and my lifestyle by that point. And that's just what I continue to do today.
Before we went on air, we were talking and you said that you had a nickname. And I wanted you to know if you would share that nickname with us, but also, did that nickname continue into your adulthood?
Yeah, no, it didn't really. So
okay.
My last name is Masiello. And the nickname, and I mentioned it to you, was Massive Jello. And honestly, it's how I felt, like a big jiggly guy, right? Like a massive Jello. I can just picture like a punching bag full of Jello and how it would wiggle and stuff. And that's probably how that's how I was probably in high school. So it didn't really continue very long, but it sticks in my mind. And I think it's funny now. I probably thought it was funny then also, but it also helps people to pronounce my name.
Right.
So, that's why I mentioned it. And that's why it seemed fitting then, because it was almost my name,
right.
Anthony Masiello. So it didn't really stick, but I've had different nicknames. I mean, I went by Big Anthony forever because I'm actually Anthony Masiello III. So there was, my grandfather was Anthony, and then my father, he took the nickname Tony, and he went by Tony. And then I was Anthony. Even in my school, when I wasn't around my father and my grandfather, I went by Anthony. But then when we were all together, it was confusing. So they used to call me Little Anthony when I was a kid. But then when I'm the biggest Anthony in the room, they changed that. I was Big Anthony. Oh, what's Big Anthony doing? And that was kind of normal. That wasn't meant to
be demeaning,
to make me feel bad. Yeah, or be demeaning. It was like, we had to pick something. If I would have had blue shoes, maybe it would have been Blue Shoe Anthony. I don't know.
So now here you are, lost all that weight. You used to be called Massive Jello. You used to be called Big Anthony. So when did you disassociate, or have you disassociated with those nicknames? When did you break up with them?
Yeah, I don't remember a specific time, but my friends are funny. They would ask, as I was losing the weight, and I was losing it pretty quickly, they would ask if I was sick. They would come up with all kinds of funny jokes. So, and I'm 6'4", so Big Anthony probably stuck for a little while longer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really remember. There wasn't like a period of time where I noticed that people stopped, using any of those nicknames.
I'm excited for you to hear this mind-blowing information that we have coming up. But before we do,
we want to thank everyone for their support with the Yummy Foods activity book for kids that we recently published and is now available on Amazon and Kindle. We know it's being used in homeschooling programs as community outreach materials, as well as a way to keep kids busy, learning, and having fun without electronics. We wanted to share a few testimonials happy customers have left, and this one's from Jessica.
I love learning about new foods. Still being a fairly new vegan family, I would love for them to learn even more. I was pleasantly surprised when we received the workbooks and every one of my children, ages 1, 3, 8, 10, 12, and 16 took interest. Wow. Well done, Shoshana and Adam. This book is interesting, fun, informative, and I feel good about the fact that my kids are not only wanting to play with it, but they are learning at the same time. Win-win.
This one's from Timothy.
The recipe activities are great. No stress, It's a way to bond with your kids in the kitchen and teach basic kitchen skills. I recommend it for homeschooling, church-based programs, and presentations to elementary school kids. The worksheets can also be used as fun activities to test basic food literacy knowledge in adult-based presentations.
To get yourself or a young one a copy, visit the link in our show notes, which is planttrainers.com/yummyfoods, or search Yummy Foods on your country's Amazon site. And now back to the show. See, for me, it's always about finding what motivates you to make the change. And you were given this insurance policy, but I think more importantly, well, you were denied the insurance policy, but I think more importantly, you realized that you didn't want your children to grow up with you the way you were. And that's very similar to myself. And for those people that have heard and know my story, there was a point where I was told I might not be on this planet to watch my kids grow up. And
Right.
that was what ignited me down the path. And I think that people that want to make a change need to find some type of significant motivation to get them to take that next step, because it's very easy just to stay where you are or let yourself decline. It's much harder to go the right direction or the other direction.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's where my motivation was. It was in what kind of, well, first of all, I was embarrassed and depressed by the kind of person I had let myself become, even just for myself, right? And now then I start thinking, what kind of role model am I going to be for these children? You know, I care more about parenting than I do most anything in the world right now. And then also I kind of felt guilty talking to my wife, like, what kind of partner am I being? You know, it was easy when it was the two of us because, you know, I could struggle and take care of myself and she could take care of herself. But now we need, you know, now our lives are about these other, you know, these children, which require a lot of work and attention. And am I even going to be able to do any of that? You know, and how is that going to make me feel if I can't? So you're right. It was this huge accumulation. So I personally think having that strong purpose is, just like you said, it's absolutely critical. And, you know, now when I'm working with clients and stuff, I think it's critical for a period of time, because I'll ask you guys, you know, for me, it's incredibly easy to live this lifestyle now. And I know the two of you have been doing this for a while. And I mean, do you agree with that?
For sure. There's no question. It certainly helps. It makes it easier. The drive continues because you know why you're doing it. The purpose is there. And when people find their reason, their purpose, their why they're doing this, it makes it a lot easier. But it's not necessarily going to make it easy, and B, it's not going to be the only thing you need, because I think for us to be able to be successful at creating change, we need support. We need people around us. We need to build some type of network of people that potentially are in similar situations, maybe not identical, but have some of the similar purposes or drives that we do that can help keep us going. And we know that that's something that you've been working on in building communities and networks to help people that are in those situations. So I want to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about growing those networks and communities and how that's going and how people can help by being there to get your support or other support from other people.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, we need all of those things. The one thing I want to add to it is I really think we need all of those things for a period of time, because I don't think living this lifestyle is hard. I think change is hard. And change takes it takes different amounts of time for different people. And it also depends on how well you set yourself up for that lasting change. So, these are the things I learned looking back. And I keep hesitating right now because I almost want to say change is impossible. But if you do have that really strong purpose and you happen to also know what to do, like I accidentally found Eat to Live, right? So I was highly motivated. Then I happened to accidentally find the right information. And then I was motivated long enough and I had enough accountability around me in that I was working with my doctor to get off my medication, and my wife was very supportive, and some other people in my life during that period of time, so that I was able to get through that hard period, which for me probably was a year and a half or so, that it really took a lot of effort. Like, I mean, every day I had to consciously think about it. But then at some point in time, it stopped taking effort and it became easy. And then I said, well, maybe I can help other people. And that's where then that community comes in. And I've even studied like things like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff. And the recidivism rate for people who don't go to step 12, which is basically helping other people, is pretty high. If people stop before the point where they're helping other people, then the change often doesn't last as long. So in the beginning, that was very motivating for me as well. Like, okay, if I get out there and I keep myself in the conversation, and if I share my story a little bit and I try, see what I can do for other people, then that's actually helping me as well. And that's where I believe that our community is just stronger together.
There's a lot of accountability there. When you put it out there and you say, this is who I am, this is the change I've made, this is who I want to be, then you think twice before you go and find that chicken wing or little dubby or whatever it is that's going to throw you off course, because now all of a sudden you don't want to embarrass yourself. If it's not for you, then it becomes for other people.
Right. And then Dr. Furman put me in the second edition of Eat to Live. My success story is in there. I was like, wow. First it was on his website, then it was in there. Then he started inviting me to share my story at some of his events and things. And exactly what you said, I'm not going to go stand up on stage and feel embarrassed. Like, I want to go stand up there and be proud. So I'm going to stick, really stick with it. And then it gets to a point where, and this is really key, I want people to know this, because it gets to the point where you don't have to really think about it anymore. And it just becomes, normal way of life. And it would actually be, it probably would be easier to start eating junk food just because it's so convenient and our environments are set up to do that. But it would take effort, to change from where I am today. So you asked about community stuff. So, I mean, we're so fortunate now. I didn't have social media when I started in 2005 and 2006. And 2007 is when I finished. September of 2007, I finished losing my weight. And actually, I was able to get the life insurance policy in like the preferred category, which just completely blew my mind and validated everything that I've been doing. But so now we have this social media where we can create online community, help each other. And the fact that you mentioned Josh and Tim, who've been on the show, and then both of yourselves, the fact that we all know who each other are is pretty amazing. Yeah. I think that we can just connect that easily. So those are great. And that's a big part of what we're doing with the Healthy Human Revolution, is working with Dr. Lori Marbus and with Jason Cohen, who's working on the Big Change documentary and has interviewed hundreds of people who have made big changes in their lives. Basically trying to bring all that experience together to help to make it, I don't even want to say easier, because I think there's value in doing the hard work, but to help to make it possible for others to really make this change. But then locally, I'm doing a lot of things here, and it's funny. So I host a monthly potluck, and in the summer months, we get around 70 or so people to come and just get together and share. And I have super strict rules on the food, meaning it's got to be completely vegan, unprocessed, no salt, no sugar, no oil of any kind. And I get 70 people to come, and there's always a great mix of brand new people and then, very experienced people. And we don't have any formal agendas with these. They're really like old school kind of gatherings where you just get together, you sit next to whoever you end up sitting next to. But every single time there are people who are seeking information, learning from other people who had the experience, as kind of like a peer relationships. And those things, just to watch those things form, it's incredible. And then other people will ask like, oh, I wish I had something like this by me. And I just tell them, I'm like, well, just start one. That's another thing, is like, it's just so easy to just start doing these things and, getting new pockets started, and they can build up their own communities.
So what do you recommend to somebody who's saying, I don't have something like this near me. I'd like to have something near this with me, but I don't know if I really have what it takes to get it going and have 70 people show up?
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is like, if someone's starting it, you can make it however you want. You can put a limit to 5 people. You can do it at a restaurant if you're uncomfortable bringing people into your home. We're very fortunate in that we meet on the Ethos Health Farm, where Dr. Ron Weiss practices food as medicine. So he gives us the farmhouse to use for free. So it's a relatively public place. So there's no reservations about me bringing people into my home where my kids live and stuff. But I would say I wouldn't want that to discourage anyone from starting something. I do think that the Meetup app or tool and website is a good tool because as soon as you create your group, Meetup does a really good job of finding like-minded people in the area, and people will join. So if you don't want to meet at your home, find a restaurant or find a park. Just do it in the warm months, however you want to do it. But the thing is to look for what you can do versus letting kind of obstacles get in your way.
And I think you made a really good point there where you said you could limit it to 5 people because, you're saying you get 70. Well, it's been a while that you've been doing it. And I think if we set our expectations at 70, then we're going to be disappointed. So say, hey, if I can meet 3 other people in my area who either eat the way I do or are interested in eating this way or are willing to go on this journey with me, then that's a win. Right? So set your expectations realistically and be impressed when more show up.
Exactly. And this meetup, actually, I inherited it from some friends, and they had limited it to 12 people for like maybe 5 years or so because they were doing it in their townhouse and they just literally didn't have space to have more people than that. And they would consistently get, between 8 and 12 people to come once a month. And then they moved out of the area and they asked if I would take it over. And I did. And I didn't want to invite people to my house at the time. And it was working well as a potluck. So I didn't even want to find a restaurant. But then I found this, so I worked it out to where we got to use this farmhouse. And then in the summer times, we just meet outside. But we have tables and chairs for that many people. So we're very fortunate in that way. But it just grew over time. So in total, the meetup group that I'm operating now, it has maybe 480 something members that some of them have been members for 5 years and I probably haven't seen in that long, but it does. You're exactly right. It took a lot of time. And then the consistency is key. If you just keep doing it over and over, then more and more people will find you. People will begin to schedule it and do it. So the other thing is I want to mention is that it's not a contest. It doesn't matter how big it goes. It just matters, if it's doing what whoever's organized it wants it to do. If you really just want to have dinner with 2 couples, just limit it to 6 people or something like that. So it can really be anything. And then I would just encourage people to be open-minded because I think this year in 2019, I think I'm just seeing so much movement in this area that I wouldn't be shocked if everything starts to just kind of overfill and sell out and all of those things.
Right. And then you can go public, right? You could go into a public park. You could just do snacks, right? Fruits and vegetables. It doesn't necessarily have to be, an over-the-top, no sugar, no grains, no salt kind of meal that can overwhelm a lot of people. And that way you could keep it family-friendly too.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And since I mentioned how strict I am, I also want to mention how inclusive I insist on it being. And you're right. If people don't know how to cook, if people don't know how to do things, I tell everyone who contacts me that the price of admission is 4 apples. Like, I really do feel confident that anyone can go by the store and pick up 4 apples or 4 bananas or 4 oranges, or if they want to get onto carrot sticks, like that would be like an advanced move for a beginner, right? But we want everyone to come. So there's no judgment. There's anything. And we have a bowl of whole fruit there, at least one every single month, and it all gets eaten. So I want to make sure that people don't even feel bad if all they do is bring 4 apples because it's a contribution and people appreciate them. And the other people who set up an entire jackfruit taco bar with homemade guacamole and homemade salsa because they couldn't even find any with no salt in it. Like, they're just as happy to share that. It's like, I do think that this plant-based community is incredible in that way, in that everyone's so passionate about wanting other people to feel as well as they feel and really just sharing and helping to expose people in a very non-judgmental and really kind of helpful way.
And it's a very important piece for people that have these goals to get healthier. They really need that sense of community and belongingness and support to help them get to where they want to be.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. And I feel like learning from our peers is really it's one of the most valuable ways to do it, because you're really learning from real people. It's not like, I've said this before, it might be tricky for me to help someone lose 20 pounds, not because I don't understand how it would work and stuff, but as far as the habits, like how you set habits when you're going to hit your goal in, a month or 2 months or 3 months versus, 2 years it's a different process, right? So I like having a mix of people there. So like, I don't even want people to feel intimidated and say, oh, I don't want to ask Anthony how I can, how I can, for example, lose weight or get off my medication because he was in this situation. I'm only in this situation, right? I feel like it's so much more approachable, I guess, when people get to just talk to people and just accidentally learn about their stories and things like that. It's really nice.
That's something that we have as well, because our stories were more on a health perspective, but from the point where our bodies are doors, not windows. So we didn't have, we had a couple of pounds, but we're skinnier now, but we didn't have that big transformation story from 300 pounds to 150 pounds. But what Adam had in terms of his arteries and in terms of his tumor and all of that, when people realized that we were in fact sick before we started on this journey, then they're able to connect with us so much. So it doesn't matter if they're on starting from a weight journey, even though it's all a health journey. Exactly. That connection becomes so much stronger after that.
Yeah, and it's key just to keep it a health journey. And I do say that people who have a strong reason for making the change, exactly like you have, like I have, like so many of your other guests have, like it's more of a commitment and there's passion behind it. It's not like something you have to do. It's like something that we're fortunate that we're able to do, right? And I feel like that's super contagious.
Yeah, and I think, like we just said, it's very important that people realize that it's not just the people that have so much weight to lose that aren't healthy. There are people walking around that look healthy on the outside and aren't healthy on the inside. And that was me. And those people may not realize it until later on that they're not as healthy as they could or should be. And it's never too early, and I want to say it's never too late, to make a change, to improve your quality of life with the nutrition and the lifestyle so that you could really live longer and live a better quality of your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. It absolutely makes sense. And in some ways, I think me as somebody who had outward signs of my health, at least I had a daily reminder every time I look in the mirror. I'm imagining that unless you were feeling really terrible, you actually kind of had to go to the doctor to see if you were making progress. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I give you a ton of credit because, I feel like it's probably even more challenging. And I know what people were telling me after I had lost my first 100 pounds. People were like, all right, now stop losing weight. You're getting too skinny. You're getting crazy with this. So, and for, at least I still had, I had visible fat. I could pull up my shirt, right? And tell them to shut up. What do you say to people who say things like that to you, Adam?
Yeah, I kind of just nod.
Brendan Brazier's doing okay. So now that I look like him, I'm doing okay too.
Yeah. But everyone has advice, and I believe most people care. And, whether they're trying to make us feel good in that moment and probably not realizing that it's sacrifice, like that it's jeopardizing long-term quality of life to look for this feel good in the moment. When somebody says, oh, well, just have a cookie. You lost enough weight. It doesn't, you'll be fine.
Our brains are also wired for what we see so often is what we want and what becomes attractive to us. So if you're constantly looking at pictures of white kitchens, you want a white kitchen. If you're constantly looking at, shiny new cars, you want a shiny new car. So when you're constantly looking at a society that is growing together and the main population looks 10, 20, 30 pounds overweight until it gets to a point where where, where we realize that it's not healthy anymore, then our brains want everybody to look like that. So, Adam's mother or my mother or, other people or friends who are like, whoa, you're really too skinny. It wasn't so much that he was too skinny. His body went to what it should be. It's just that nobody else is that skinny. We see our friends, some friends and family who we see on a yearly basis or every 6 months, they're growing with time, some of them. But it looks normal to everybody else.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And you know what? I look back at pictures of me as a kid, and I do what you're doing. I compare them to how I see kids today on the street, and I kind of get bummed out. I'm like, I thought of myself as a fat kid. I'm no bigger than any other kid walking around, the streets today. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't. It's interesting. But at the time in the 80s, there weren't a lot of people with excess body weight. At least where I was living at the time.
Yeah. Anthony, I want to be mindful of your time. And before we close out, we talk about family and kids very often on this show. And I know your kids were really young when you started this whole process, but I'd like to know if you could share a little bit of how they have been impacted by the changes that you've made as they've been growing up.
Yeah. Well, the pediatrician calls them the healthy kids. They get to see their doctor once a year, and they're proud of that. They eat an exclusive plant-based diet right now. I would say mostly vegan. There are times where they'll be at a party or something and they'll have a piece of cake without asking the ingredients or something like that. But those things happen rarely, and maybe a time or two a year. But they grew up healthy, and as a parent, I feel like that's a gift. Now, it was, as you said, we didn't have to have a tough transition with them because they almost started eating like that. But now my wife, she switched maybe 4 years after I did. So there were times when the kids first started eating food that they were having some cheese and they were having cheese. I remember we give them black bean quesadillas with broccoli, and then they were also going out for sushi. When I would travel for work, she would take the kids out and they would get fish for sushi. But that stopped probably when the kids were maybe 4 and 6 years old, or somewhere around there. And so they've been eating this way ever since. But even now, I just pay close attention. I realize that everything is, I aim for long term. So it's kind of like steering a boat. You don't just jerk the wheel when you're in the middle of the ocean when you want to change your direction. You can make slight changes and realize that over the distance, that's going to get you where you want to be. So if they have a piece of cake at a party, I just will ask. I'll say, hey, what'd you eat at the party today? And it's a normal question for me. I mean, I take pictures of my food, so it doesn't feel out of line, right? But they'll say, I had some cake and whatever. And I'm like, well, how was it? And I said, it was okay. Or they said something like that. Then in my mind, I'm like, okay, no emergency here. Everything's fine. Right. But I would imagine if they ever said, oh my gosh, I had this cake and it was like the most amazing thing I've ever eaten. I can't wait we should try to get it. Or like if it was that kind of level of excitement or something about it, then I would, my parenting brain would think, okay, there's something here that needs a course correction. And I think, lecturing in the moment probably isn't the right case, but trying to steer them far enough away so that they start to make better decisions down the road. Because now my oldest is 14 and he's in high school. So in another 3 years, he's going to more or less be out of the house on his own. So I'm trying to really set it up now. I'm thinking about these things like helping him to, he's been ordering for himself when we go out to eat, but putting him in situations where I get to kind of watch and understand how he's making his decisions so that I know if there's any kind of parenting or intervention that I would like to make to help him to be set up on his own. But in general, I think they're solid. And as a parent, I feel like it's a tremendous gift that I've been able to give them, to be able to help them to grow up eating this way and understanding the things they do. Even early on, we really shared like some YouTube videos. My favorite YouTube video to show any kid is Rip Esselson's TED Talk, because he talks about being plant strong and he calls, the major chronic diseases, he calls them like a 5-headed dragon. And he talks about slaying the dragon. And my kids watched that at a young age, and it really helped them to kind of understand what we were doing. So I think there are enough education resources. I mean, even with the Healthy Human Revolution, we have a guide to raising plant strong kids, not called Plant Strong Kids, but healthy kids on a plant-based diet. So there are enough resources. I would say, for parents out there, just read and learn about what's around and understand that there's just a lot of, I think, kind of subtle teaching moments that you just need to address, and that it will go pretty well.
I agree completely. And what we will do is we will take some of those resources and we will put them in the show notes at planttrainers.com. We also want to put in the show notes where people can reach out to you or learn more about you. So where would you like them to go?
Yep. So I have my personal Facebook is just Anthony Masiello. My Instagram is my first initial, my last name, A Masiello on Instagram. I'm trying to do more there to help people. And my big project is, I've mentioned a couple of times, is the Healthy Human Revolution. And really, we realize that people need education, they need motivation, and they need accountability. And we're working on a subscription-based support group to really help people to have all three of those things. So no matter what stage they're at in their transformation, we can really get them what they need to really be successful long-term. And it's all done with the focus of, learning from, using our accumulated experience to be able to help with that, but really setting people up for sustainable transformation. I'm personally not interested in helping anyone to, get their bikini body for a single season. I want people to have it for the rest of their lives, things like that.
Love that, Anthony. Thank you so much for being here today on the Plant Trainers podcast. The impact that you've made on your own family and your local community is now spreading all over social media. So thank you for helping everybody, and continue to do it, my friend.
Yeah. And I just echo the same thing to you guys. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast, and thanks in general for putting this content out for people, and really for touching so many people and making it so shareable. And I love the little notes that you pull out. So I'll be curious to see what gets pulled out of here, because I think those tidbits are really what helps to spark this kind of desire to change in people. And I think it's fantastic. So thanks so much for everything the two of you do.
Thank you. Everybody likes being a quote. That's the feedback we get from the guests lately. Quote. It is fun. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.